couch entrepreneur on the spotlight. We are sitting here today with Thabang Wessie. Hi, Thabang.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm good.
Thabang, thank you for sitting with us here today and sharing your story. If you recall, Thabang was one of the guys you also interviewed when we did the LinkedIn articles that we've been publishing as it is on the Women Business Club. And we're very happy to have him here today to share the story of his success with his business, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the 4 S's of startups, okay? So, Thabang, go for it. Start with a little bit of a background for people that don't quite know who you are.
Okay, for those that don't know me, a brief profile on who I am. So, Thabang Wessie, one of 4 children, born and bred in Pretoria. And with that, it came to me just studying in Pretoria, furthering my studies with GIBS, so the Golden Institute of Business Science, doing my MBA.
And that was which year?
Sure, that was what? I graduated 2019.
2019, obviously one of the new ones.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was me. My career has largely been in the sales environment, so a little bit of banking, a large portion of FMCG. With Nestle, Mondelez, and then I just took the big leap into entrepreneurship with a friend of mine, Lebeko, who was the founder of Whoosh Innovations, and I decided to join him when we decided to commercialize the business, and that was basically my leap into entrepreneurship.
And your company is called Whoosh Innovations.
It's called Whoosh Innovations. So yeah.
What is Whoosh? Whoosh, like you're whooshing past.
Like a whoosh.
You're whooshing right through.
It's right through. I think
Okay.
the story is quite unique. How it came about, the name. So the name ultimately, how the business is primarily centered around payments, right? So we wanted a name that was ultimately very catchy.
Yes.
And almost like a Google, it's catchy, sticky. But can almost communicate the intrinsics of payments without really just looking and sounding very. Exactly. So so then Whoosh came about.
All right, that's really interesting. And how far is your business now?
Wow, business was founded in 2014.
Yes.
Right now we're at a point where we've commercialized the business, so it's primarily around payments. So the portion of the online checkout where you literally put your bank card details, and then you get an OTP and you authorize it.
So everybody has seen Yoko. Everybody knows Yoko. Everybody knows what is this one? PayFast.
Sure.
So PayFast, Yoko, that's your competitors.
You could call them our competitors. I mean, ultimately, if you look at Yoko in its entirety, I would look at PayFast more as a competitor to ourselves than Yoko. But Yoko still qualifies because they took the route almost backwards.
They started with the
mobile
cards, the card readers,
correct.
And now they've got the online payment systems as well.
Correct. So they almost they did it backwards. So then ultimately, in its entirety, we do look at Yoko as one of our competitors. I don't think they would necessarily see us in the wider scope because they play on both the card reader side and the payment gateway side.
So you're like a Black-owned, 100% owned, level 1 company that does payment processing in South Africa.
Correct.
Amazing story. So today I think the focus of what we're going to discuss is going to be around your experiences as an entrepreneur, and you're going to tell us more about how you went through and experienced the 4 S's of startups.
Sure.
Yes?
Sure.
Tell us.
Yeah, I don't know if I've coined the phrase or,
Maybe of course the phrase maybe exists, but we're definitely going to make you famous for it.
Okay. No, perfect. I've been looking for my 10 seconds of fame. Yeah. But anyway, so the 4 S's, ultimately, how I like to distinguish them is to start.
You need to start,
right? Yes. With anything. So I'll just name them quickly and I'll just go into a little bit more detail around each.
Yes.
So you start, you sell.
Yes.
You survive.
Yes.
And then you scale. That's ultimately, I think, the 4 S's of actually starting a business and maybe even starting a fintech business.
You start, you sell, you
Yes.
survive, you scale, but you have to start at some point.
You have to start at some point.
Where does funding fit in there?
Funding pretty much fits in, it could fit in all across, right? Because it's parallel, I think it really just goes across everything. But primarily when you start, you would probably need a little bit of funding. Who you start with funding from, it's always said the 3 F's, right? Friends, family, and fools.
Friends, that one I know about.
Right. So at the end of the day, I don't like to call them fools. I like to call them, fellows.
Fellows that believe in your ideas, because there's a lot of businesses out there that would not be here today if those fools did not initially invest in that initial amount.
Correct. So let's change them to fellows for now.
Yes.
Yeah. So ultimately, it's about starting. And start in any way or form. Like just get it out there and get down to the basics and of understanding what's required to start the business.
Yes.
Payments is a very, very regulated sector. Not many players of our demographic that play within payments, but and understanding how to get into it is very difficult. But once you crack that portion, it's about just starting. Just get it out there, get the business started, get regulated with PASA. That you have, which is ultimately all part of registering your business, and ultimately then take it to market. Start selling.
Yes. And how hard was it to start this type of business? I mean, in South Africa, I can't imagine a lot of black businesses are into fintech because you require some knowledge of financial services industry, but you also fintech is technology.
Sure.
So you almost need both. Understanding of technology and understanding of finances, and it's a bit of a tricky sort of balance. How did you guys get into that?
Sure. And that one I really have to give credit to Thabang Wessie. He's like the mad scientist that goes into
your partner.
Yeah, the partner. And he literally found a way, or he's one of those people that just investigates until he finds the root cause and the actual solution. So what he did is that he ultimately just investigated. He started as a mobile. When he started, he was thinking of doing the Yoko route, of starting as a mobile card reader. But in terms of trying to acquire the funding, because it's very capital intensive.
You have to get the machines, to actually get them made, because you have to do a bit of hardware, electronics design.
Correct.
And
Correct, absolutely. So it almost, led to a pivot of sorts. Where he's like, okay, fine, let's actually look the other way, because for a payment card or a card reader to work, you need a payment gateway. Right. So that's where the pivot actually happened. The regulations with regards to South Africa are quite stringent, and duly so. You have to be registered with PASA to process cards. You need to have PCI level compliance. So that's payments cards industry, which
what is that?
It's basically a level of it's a standard compliance regulation that regulates the information passed with regards to card fraud and making sure that the information on all card payments is absolutely secure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure that people are safe on your platform.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so you started. Now we are on the selling part.
Yeah. Now you're on the selling part, the difficult one, right?
Yes.
Because it's either you've got funding somewhere there to help you sell, and in selling, you need to get your market or your marketing out there, your brand name, and on a short budget.
Yes, I mean, to be honest, I'm an entrepreneur myself, and one of the challenges I experience, because I do software development and coming across people that have these great ideas. They want to build this beautiful, amazing platform that will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's good on paper.
Sure.
And you can build amazing software, and then it sits there because nobody's using it.
Correct.
To get it to the point where people are using it and saying, how do you overcome those challenges in your business? How do you get your product out there to be visible?
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's one thing that we've been really, I wouldn't call it challenged, but it's I think it's everything, it's ultimately part of everything that every startup or small business goes through, is that getting your name out there and holding true to what your brand actually resonates and communicates to the market is something that you want to make sure of. But in doing that, you can't, you don't have a budget, so you have to be quite creative,
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's the first part, identifying your target market. And I think that those are the two, identifying your target market and product market fit as like such a big thing, And I don't know if it ever actually comes to everybody.
Yeah, and maybe also trust, I would imagine in your specific industry, there's also the level of trust.
Absolutely.
Because to process payments, people's credit cards, information, if I was a business person, I would think, I'd rather just go to Yoko that I know, than trial in person is how do you overcome those trust issues to get people to give you a chance? Because yes, you're a startup and maybe there's a bit of risk involved, but everybody's there something.
No, true. No, absolutely, 100%. I mean, the trust portion is the biggest portion that you need to make sure of. How do you communicate that effectively without sounding boring?
Exactly.
But at the same time, whoever you're speaking to, they really want to make sure that you're not going to play with their details.
Their details and their whatever. And also they also have client information which they cannot not allowed to get to put into risk. So they're also a middleman between some other group of people, I imagine.
Sure.
So there's all of that.
No, 100%. And I think it's just about staying true to the values. If anything, the PCI compliance gives us the assurity that we're not compromising any card data, but it's also around the brand trust. So the operational trust is almost there. We know it. We can trust it. But it's the brand trust for people to believe you.
It's a perceived trust. It's not realistic because you know that your product is perfect. You know your product has been tried and tested. You know you are compliant. You on your side, typically you are sound. It's the perceived trust from an external audience looking at inside a shoe who hasn't used it before. That's really what you have to overcome.
Absolutely, 100%.
No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And then once you get past the selling,
then it's survival. Then it's the shaky boat that you have to just navigate and hold on.
yes.
And it's the story of many startups and many small businesses. How do you survive a storm? I mean, especially in a period like COVID-19.
Yeah.
How
do you keep going?
You have to just keep going. It's about, I think, if anything, what I've learned very quickly is that what you do as a primary business might not always be what you do in order to stay afloat. So you might be doing one thing, but you do something else in order to make sure that you're weathering the storm. Because in building a brand, you might and building a business, everything that you expect to come in, or all the plans and everything that you forecast, might not come in immediately. It's a long game. So there might be little things that you do on the side. So it could be you offering consulting on the side to make sure that, okay, the services, those intangible services that I can outlay or give to the market in order to get some sort of revenue going into the business, it might be what you're doing. So that survivalist mentality of always not hedging your bets on your primary business, but not forgetting what your primary business is I think my best advice to people. To say, the survival part is probably the most difficult part because bills don't stop coming, but revenue can stop coming. And if you manage to find something that can just bring in money and doesn't necessarily take you away from your core, and when I say take away, it just means it doesn't shift you from stopping
the main focus. Focusing on.
Exactly.
And the survival stage, I think maybe what is not always clear for people that are outside the entrepreneurship journey is that it can take months to years.
Sure.
It's not a quick, let's survive for a couple of weeks.
No. I mean, that's where the likes, survivalist is where you start looking at your runway, right? And you say, okay, fine, we start looking at the runway is only going to last whatever, based on what your projected revenue, projected by the way, and your expenses and the likes. So then you start looking at certain alternatives to say, okay, how do I extend the runway? Maybe one of them is funding. Angel investors going around, maybe entering competitions of sorts that allow you to leverage their platforms, and maybe there's a prize of sorts, financial prize. Accelerators are also good because they tend to almost expose you to that market of people that are interested in the sort of businesses that you do. And that's my thing. And even government funding,
even government funding, have we had any?
Have we had any? No. Unfortunately.
Government funding is like, in my mind, one of those unicorns that people talk about. Everybody knows the word unicorn, but no one has seen one.
Sure.
Like you hear about it all the time. It's in all the books, all the cultures, all the storylines. It is a common phrase, probably one of the most mentioned phrases, but there's no one that has seen one. No one can even agree on what it actually looks like. Does it have a rainbow tail or does it have a white tail? Nobody knows because no one has actually seen one. Right?
And you know, at the same time, I would like to say that maybe I haven't spoken to the person that's received the funding, because it seems it is out there. For by virtue of the fact that I haven't received it, I don't think disqualifies the fact that
it's there. I don't know. I'll believe that they point me to someone and say, that person, build that business, that was government funding right there. I want to see it.
Sure.
And I've been around entrepreneurs for a long time.
Sure.
I hear about it in the news. You hear the stories, like the articles, you know, oh, this much money was given to, you know, but I've never seen, I don't know either. But I'd like to believe that it's there.
No, let's stay believe.
Yes. Yeah. But while we're on the capital side, because we had an interesting discussion with Dumi earlier on one of our other interviews, put her on the spotlight. Yes, with respect to her, equity funding and growth financing.
Yes.
You know, what has been your journey like on the funding front?
Funding is, let me put it this way, from a fintech point of view, I find that funding is hard but not hard. Hard but not hard. And why I say that is that the amount of funding that's coming into Africa as a whole, VC funding, is immense. We are one of the key regions in Africa that are receiving funding, looking at South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia. Those are probably the 4 big markets that are really receiving VC funding. I think it ranges over $1 billion.
Over $1 billion of US dollars.
US dollars in the last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Really? Where is that money going?
Well, you should. Oh my word! I would like to actually find out so I can make sure I can grab some. Yes. No, but I think that's why I say it's not hard, because it looks like the appetite is there from a funder's perspective. If we're looking at it from external funders and probably even some South African funders, the appetite is there. We've heard of even the likes of Dumi getting funding.
Yes, definitely. Fortunately, when it comes to VC funding, I know a couple of people. I can point to people that have received it.
Sure. So I think in that front, I think the hard part is possibly telling your story correctly. Because ultimately, for those that are willing to listen, they obviously bet on the jockey, they bet on the product, and really they bet on your market, right? What's your big bet, and what's the market that you're actually willing to actually take a slice of? So I think that's the part that when our challenge is that we need to make sure that we tell the right story. Telling the people that we've been in front of, they've given us some valuable feedback on, we're not sure about this, and yet again, I mean, South Africa is not. It's not like it's a blank canvas when it comes to payment services. It's quite a few, so you need to find that niche. I think we've actually found ours, which necessarily helps us tell our story to funders. And when we tell our story, we tell it well, and we make sure that we've got our story in check in terms of financials and the likes, and what the product really aims to deliver and the problem it aims to solve. That's when the funding comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a really interesting story to tell. And then finally, the scale.
Scale.
Once you've managed to survive long enough, and I think if you look at these 4 S's, I was actually just drawing a funnel next to it, because I think it looks more like a funnel. It's the funnel of entrepreneurship in my mind, because everybody wants to start or thinks about starting.
Yes.
There's more people on the level of starting. Then once they start, then some can go from starting to selling.
Sure.
But it's a smaller percentage of the ones who started, because not everyone manages to sell anything. In fact, a lot of businesses just get stuck with the idea, because I've met tons of entrepreneurs who have this idea, and then they build a proposal, and then they go around to investors looking for funding.
Sure.
And then they give up on the idea because nobody funded their business.
Sure.
And then they go back to their day-to-day job, and then they never started.
Sure.
And then some just start selling, who can bootstrap, and then they sell, and then the survival part that really filters people. Then you get like 1 or 2 that are still surviving.
Yeah.
To get to the scale part.
Sure. And I think, and you're absolutely right. If you look at it from a funnel, it actually
like that.
It almost filters those, and at some point, only the strong really survive.
Yes.
And really, the absolute great maybe scale. I don't know if that's the right term.
Maybe this then tells the story. I think the whole concept, many entrepreneurs have this concept of, I'll write a nice proposal, I've got this business idea that is going to be great. I'm going to write this great proposal, and then I'm going to go look for funding. I mean, Those entrepreneurs always look at them and just go back to your day job. What do you say to those people?
Well, what you know, and without trying to be too humorous to that approach, sometimes people want to take the safe approach. I think ultimately, the moment you put your own money in,
yes,
that's when it gets really real. You know? And put your own money in and just have that perspective of losing it. I think you will do your best to start selling.
yes.
So at that point, you won't necessarily just look at it and say, I need to start, and if somebody doesn't fund me, I won't start it.
Yes.
You'll make a plan if you put your own money.
If you put your own money,
You know?
you make a plan to sell because you know it's do or die.
Sure. 100%. And then I think when it gets to the sell part, I think that my thing was don't wait for funding, just rather focus on getting your first customer.
Uh-huh.
You know, like once you got your first customer, I think it snowballs to a certain effect from there. You know, it's easier to start learning what your customers really like and what they want and how to service them. And then from there you actually know how to
you get your
second.
referrals back
Correct.
and return clients, and then they tell other people about you. And you know, the majority of our business, for example, is just from people who have been referred by other people.
No, I totally believe in that. I think for any small business, the majority of your second or third or fourth customer is only going to be on referral.
Yes.
It's not going to be from your brilliant marketing.
No.
I think
No.
it's not.
Not from an amazing website. It's not going to be from your social media influencers. No. It's not going to be from your Facebook ads. No. It's going to be from you did a great job for somebody.
Sure.
And then somebody is going to tell 5 people about it. Maybe out of that 5, 2 will come back to you like, oh, I love that thing you did for that person, and I also have. Then it will grow from there.
No, absolutely.
Yes.
100%. I think that's where it is.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your Google Accelerator Program. I think that's amazing because I think, well, how many people compete in that selection?
Sure. Wow. I must say we're absolutely humbled as a team
Yes.
to have been selected for that. I mean, that one was, I think we're one of 15 across the African continent to have been chosen. 2 in South Africa.
So they chose 15 across the whole of Africa.
Correct.
And out of that 15 that they selected, in South Africa they selected only 2.
Correct.
And how many applications came through from the 2
Sure.
that they selected?
I need to go back to the numbers that they shared with us, but it was I think it ranged in the thousands, if anything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Google is, everybody wants to be part of the Google Accelerator because I think they're the ones that produce Lemonade, isn't it? That insurance company, the one that does that phone insurance where you can insure a phone, looks at the battery and some very fancy AI technologies with, you can just double check. I can't remember the name, but there's some very nice tech companies that have come out of
that accelerator.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No. I think if anything, there was one that was chosen, and I would like to give them the kudos and the congratulations. There was another company in South Africa selected called Cooler App. They're an agri-tech company.
Yes.
They've also just announced their pre-seed funding round. I think about 20 million rands. And I think those are the sort of things that we'd like to celebrate and congratulate African fintechs for doing. So they're reaching that point where they're getting the right connections and getting the right partners on board to help them grow their business and grow their offering.
That's amazing. And so they select you for this accelerator, and then what do they offer you support? Do they offer you mentors? What is included in the program?
Oh, it's a very well structured program. So ultimately, I think it's not the first time they do it. So they've done it quite a few times, and they've mastered how and what startups need. So it's like mentoring. Firstly, I think it's the workshops where they avail the Google team and mentors to actually give us workshops on how to actually really analyze your business from a product perspective, an operational perspective, HR, strategy, marketing. They give you all those specific tools. And I think and then from there there's one-on-one mentors that
you get one-on-one mentors from Google or from a neighborhood community of
a community. They literally have a wide community of mentors that you can literally reach out to, have consultation with, give you guidance on what you should do. And really, I think it's the sort of information that one would pay for
Oh. Okay.
You know, if I think about it, you're really in any kind of day you would pay for this sort of information, but being on that accelerator helps you because they literally guide you, they take you through specific processes on what's the next step that you guys should be thinking about in order to actually really clarify and crystallize your product offering.
That's really
All right? And I think that the biggest portion, outside of just meeting these amazing guys from every part of the continent, because if you actually look at what people are doing out there, it's quite amazing.
To see what the other sort of accelerator companies that are involved in the program are busy doing. Tell us the most interesting ones. The most interesting ones. Because I think we'll run out of time if you tell us about 15 different companies.
No, you know what, I really want to just try to keep it confidential because I don't have the right to speak about those guys. But if anything, I'll speak about the South African guys because the information is public.
Yes.
And it's the agri-tech business called Kula.
Yes.
I think they've got an amazing product. It's basically a marketplace. It's a tech marketplace for farmers and meeting. It's basically a meeting place of farmers and retailers and the likes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
So farmers, like if I'm growing tomatoes, I can sell them on that. It's like an Uber for vegetables.
You could say that. It's a very structured approach that they've got. They've got a specific app that they've launched, and 3 different and basically specific offerings. You know, for the startup farmer, for funding as well as for resources.
Yes.
So I think the connection where every farmer needs to almost connect with the customer, every farmer needs to connect with the investor,
funding, yes.
and every farmer needs to connect with
If you want to buy land, also do they have? If you want to become a farmer, I never know where to start. I go there like, oh, somebody's selling their farm.
I wouldn't say, but I think what the product overall is quite an amazing product.
Okay.
I can't go into the detail because I'm not sure what it is.
But I will check it out for sure.
Yeah, the Kula.
It's already publicly available.
It is.
I can go to the market store and get it.
Yes, please do. I think that's the one of the things that I want to speak about around the great things that Africans are doing around tech. And I think the other part is just the network that the Google Accelerator exposes you to. And that's the big part, is that once you have a very strong network, I think you are more likely to get through the survival stage and into the scale stage.
Yeah, no, definitely that's very important.
Sure.
To be able to have the right people, the right advice.
Exactly.
The right advice.
Exactly.
Okay, so thank you very much for sharing your story with us. You know, I always end all my interviews with this very same question. You know, if you had to give advice to yourself before you started, you know, like with everything you've learned so far, what advice would you give yourself? If you met your old self, I don't know, just before you went into business and everything you've learned so far.
Sure. Wow, that's a very good question. I think if anything, I would go back to my old self and say that doubt is a crutch, and don't lean on it for too long.
Don't lean on doubt.
Yeah, don't lean on doubt because it's you're gonna crutch and it's gonna prevent you from running.
Yes.
Just leave doubt and believe in yourself. Go for it. Go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And really, you never know how the cards may fall.
Yeah. Just jump in that pool.
Sure.
Just go for it.
Absolutely.
Worst case, just do it. I think I get this advice from different people in different formats, like different angles of the same advice.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
But it's basically about, you know, just do it.
No, absolutely. I think you just have to start.
All right. Thank you very much, Thabang, for your time.
Thank you.
We shall learn a lot from your lessons.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.